We are now arriving to part 3 of this Iceberg video, and just like last week, even more people have gone missing since the last video. That means we are up to 21,000 people missing since the start of this series, and we are nowhere near done yet. Hello everyone, my name is Juby Scott, and welcome back to the Missing Persons Iceberg video explained. We are now diving deeper into the depths of this iceberg, and we will soon be reaching the bottom as of next week. So sit back, relax, and be thankful you're not one of the 21,000 people missing. Michaela Bali. Michaela Bali is a Canadian citizen who, at the age of 16, disappeared from her hometown of Yorktown, Canada on April 12, 2016. She was last seen between 1 and 1:45 p.m. at a local bus stop. Despite several reported sightings, no definitive clues of Bali's whereabouts have been found since then, and her fate is currently unknown. Based on witness statements and a review of hundreds of hours of surveillance camera footage, investigators were able to reconstruct Bali's movements for a large portion of the day on which she disappeared. As a result, an extensive timeline of her actions from that day exists. Michaela Bali has been missing for 7 years, 5 months, and 27 days. Crystal Rogers. At the time of her disappearance in her home in Bardstown, Kentucky, on July 3, 2015, her boyfriend at the time said she disappeared from her home overnight. Her car was found on a nearby highway 2 days later. Rogers' family believes the boyfriend was involved in foul play. He was considered a suspect after he broke off an interview. Her family also believes that the case is connected to the unsolved 2016 shooting death of Rogers' father while hunting. In 2023, 2 area men, including her former boyfriend, were indicted of charges connected to the case. At the time of her disappearance, the 35-year-old mother of 5 was living with her boyfriend, Brooks Hewick, their 2-year-old son, and her other children. Brooke is the last person known to have seen her, stating she was on her phone playing games at their home and then went to bed. She was gone the next morning when he woke up, and her car was not in the driveway. Her family began to worry after multiple attempts to contact her that day failed. 2 days later, Crystal's 2007 Chevy Impala was found parked with a flat tire by mile marker 14 of the Bluegrass Parkway. The keys were still in the ignition, and her purse and cell phone were also found inside. She was officially reported missing by her mother, Sherry Ballard, the same day. Crystal Rogers has been missing for 8 years, 3 months, and 6 days. Weldon Keys. Weldon Keys was an American poet, novelist, critic, and playwright who had also worked across the spectrum of other media, including painting, jazz music, and filmmaking. His poetry was influenced by fellow mid-century American poets such as John Berryman, Elizabeth Bishop, and Robert Lowell. Perhaps due to his failed marriage and subsequent drug abuse, Keys disappeared on July 19, 1955. His car was found abandoned near the Golden Gate Bridge. It is presumed that he either moved to Mexico and died in obscurity or committed suicide. His reputation was resuscitated in large part thanks to the American poet John Dustis, who published his collected poems in 1959. Keys is now considered one of the premier American poets of the mid-20th century, but has still not been found. Akia Eagleston. Akia Eagleston was a young woman who vanished in 2017. She was 8 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance and was supposed to be on bed rest. Akia was last seen on May 3, 2017 at a bank 3 miles from her house, where she withdrew over $500 in cash, which was uncharacteristic of her. A baby shower was planned for Eagleston on May 7th. When she didn't show up, she was reported missing. Her family went to her apartment. They found it completely empty except for her bed, as if she had moved out. However, due to her pregnant state, it is doubted that she would have been able to do this herself. She left behind a 2-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. In February 2022, Andre Michael Robertson, the father of her unborn child, was arrested for her murder, as well as the murder of her unborn baby. Eagleston had told her best friends that she'd planned to move in with Robertson, and authorities believe he used this to facilitate the murders. As of July 2023, Robertson's trial is ongoing. Eagleston's body has never been recovered, but it may have been put in a landfill. Jean Spangler. On Friday, October 7th, 1949, Spangler left her home in Los Angeles around 5 p.m. She left her daughter with Sophie and said that she was meeting Benner to discuss the late child support payment. After that, she was going to work on a night shoot for a film. 2 hours after leaving, Spangler called home and spoke with Sophie as well as her daughter. She told Sophie she would have to work the full 8 hours and would probably not return home that evening. At the time, Spangler's mother Florence was out of town visiting family in Louisville, Kentucky. The following morning, October 8th, Sophie went to the police and filed a missing person report after Spangler failed to return home. Though Spangler had told her sister-in-law that she was going to work on a film set after she met with Benner, police checked with studios and the Screen Extras Guild and found no records indicating that she had worked that night. A saleswoman at the farmer's market, only a few blocks from Spangler's home, recalled seeing her browsing around 6 p.m. and noted that she appeared to be waiting for someone. This was the last known sighting of Spangler. Police questioned Benner about her statement to Sophie that she was going to meet him about his child support payments. He claimed he had not seen his former wife for several weeks. His new wife, Lynn Lasky Benner, to whom he had been married to for only a month, corroborated his story. At this time, Jean Spangler has been missing for 74 years and 16 days. Virginia Dare. For those of you who have been following me for a while, Virginia Dare is the first English child born in the United States. Virginia Dare was also part of the Roanoke Colony. The Roanoke Colony was located in the present-day North Carolina Outer Banks. Sir Walter Raleigh attempted expeditions twice before to Roanoke Island. The second was a failed attempt to establish a colony on the island. The third and final expansion in 1587 was led by Governor John White and consisted of 116 men and women. Virginia Dare was born on Roanoke Island during the third expedition, less than a month after it landed at Roanoke. 9 days after her birth, on August 27, 1587, John White left the colony, pledging to return in 3 months. He returned to England, reported to Raleigh, and requested aid. However, the Spanish Armada attack in 1588 delayed White's return to Roanoke. White finally returned 3 years later on August 18, 1590, Virginia's third birthday, and he found the colony abandoned. The fate of the settlers left behind is unknown, and the colony is known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke. Some say that they joined the Native American tribes around, some say they were killed by the Native American tribes around, and there are conspiracy theories of UFOs and aliens coming down, as well as a zombie plague virus. Unfortunately, the entire Lost Colony of Roanoke and Virginia Dare herself has been missing, and we do not know the fate of them. If you are interested in a fully detailed version of the Lost Colony of Roanoke, please check out the Juby After Dark series. Rico Harris. Rico Harris converted his long-distance relationship to a live-in one, which caused some friction between Song and Harris as the two began merging their lives. Harris nevertheless continued with his plans to move on with his life in a new city. He exchanged his California's driver's license for a Washington-issued one. He was able to arrange a job interview for a position as a property appraiser. It meant much to him, as it would have been the first time he held a skilled position unrelated to his athletic ability. Before that, however, he decided he needed to return to Alhambra and visit his mother and brother one more time. Song believes his intent was to talk with them and reach some closure for difficult events of his childhood. I think he realized some things he wanted to talk to his mother about. She later told a reporter he wanted her to trust him and trust us and believe in our relationship. Laura spoke with him by phone during the drive to Southern California. He says Rico was upbeat, hoping to marry Song and start a family with her. He seemed to have his head together, he recalls. However, his visit with his family on October 9th was brief. He took one of his brothers out to eat and gave him a new cell phone as a gift, then returned to his mother's home to speak with her alone privately. Fernandez does not believe her son got what he was hoping for out of the conversation. Shortly after midnight, he decided to return, taking with him a few more personal belongings. His job interview was scheduled the next day in Seattle. Leaving Alhambra, he drove north on Interstate 5. Records show that he stopped in Lodi, 40 miles south of Sacramento, to get gas. At 10:45 a.m. on October 10th, he called Song from north of Sacramento and left a message saying that he was going up into the mountains to rest, since he had not slept much since leaving Seattle. At 11:15, he turned the phone off, and no one has heard from Harris or positively identified him since then. Rico Harris has been missing for 9 years and 13 days. Kaylin Louder. Kaylin was born on January 21st, 1984, along with her brother Colton. In 2006, she graduated with a degree in social work from Utah State University. In 2009, Colton shoots and kills their uncle Jeffrey Ackerman. He is sentenced to 5 years in prison later that same year. Throughout her life, Kaylin showed no signs of mental illness. She was also unemployed for long periods of time, lasting over a year. Due to this, her father reported her to be a little depressed. However, her mother said she was in good spirits and still updating her resume and applying for jobs. On September 26, 2014, a little past 9 p.m., Kaylin makes a call to 911. During the call, she insists there was a fight going on in her condo's clubhouse. The dispatcher asks if there were weapons involved, to which she responds, "Guns." When police arrive, they find a wedding reception in the clubhouse with no signs of an altercation. All guests can confirm no fight ever took place. 1 hour later, Kaylin dials 911 again, but hangs up before the call is answered. Police call her back. During the call, Kaylin sounds confused and sounds as though she is having trouble remembering her address. Throughout the call, she is mumbling and is difficult to understand. She does mention that her roommate thinks she is delusional and paranoid. At 8:18 the following day, Kaylin makes her final 911 call before her disappearance. She claims there is an intruder in her home. During the call, she is extremely distressed while her roommates insist no one can be in the house as the bolt on the door is still locked. Police report says they can hear Kaylin yelling in the background of the call for the intruder to leave. When police arrive at the home, they find no signs of a break-in or robbery. Her roommate states no one else was in the home. At 3:30 p.m. and 5:45 p.m. the same day, Kaylin is spotted on a security camera outside her condo by an area which led to a creek. At 3:30, she is seen outside the rain, dressed in shorts, a tank top, and is barefoot. Later at 5:45, she is seen running. However, the speed at which she was running suggests nothing was chasing her. The last video footage of her shows that she is carrying her dog into the same location outside. She's very animated throughout all the clips and is either talking to herself or her dog in the final clip. This was her last known location. Later that day, on September 27th, 2014, Kaylin Louder is reported missing. Just over 9.5 weeks later, Kaylin's body is discovered by a team investigating a blocked pipe in the Jordan River, about 5 miles away from her condo. An autopsy came back inconclusive, but stated that there were no drugs in her system and no foul play was involved. However, her family believes otherwise. They stated, "Without influential people and deep pockets, our family fears we are left to accept what the authorities have speculated." Theories are still being made on what exactly happened to Kaylin Louder, and if this case is closed as the police believe, the creek outside her condo does connect to the Jordan River, but is usually quite shallow. Raised water levels caused by the rain could have changed this and allowed her body to travel downstream. The body has been discovered. I don't know why this one was on the list, but there you go. You know Kaylin Louder. Kiplin Davis. Kiplin Davis was a 15-year-old Spanish Fork high school student who disappeared from her high school campus in Spanish Fork, Utah. She is one of the featured children on the Poly Class Foundation website. In 2011, a classmate was convicted of manslaughter in the murder of Davis and sentenced to 15 years in prison. However, the man refused to name his alleged accomplices or indicate where Davis' remains were supposedly concealed. Davis, a sophomore, was last seen at Spanish Fork High School in Spanish Fork, Utah. That morning, she had an argument with her parents and arrived early to school. She subsequently attended all of her morning classes and was last seen at lunchtime in the school's cafeteria with her friends and classmates. She did not show up for her 4th and 5th period classes. However, one close friend said he spoke with her between 4th and 5th period, but later changed his story. All of her personal belongings, including her purse, makeup, dental retainer, and school books, were left in her locker at school, and she never returned home for the day. It has been testified that she told friends that she would not be attending activities planned that evening, and in fact, had mentioned it would be better if she ran away. She was reported missing when she failed to arrive home at 5 p.m., when she was always home by 3:30 p.m. Susan Powell. On the morning of December 6, 2009, Susan and her 2 boys, Charles and Braden, attended church services. A neighbor visited them at home in the afternoon, leaving at about 5 p.m. This was the last time Susan was seen by someone from outside the Powell household. At first, relatives reported the entire Powell family missing on December 7th. Joshua's mother, Tarika, and his sister, Jennifer Grades, went looking for them at their house shortly after being informed that the children had not been dropped off at daycare that morning. They called the police after failing to make contact with Joshua and Susan. The police broke into the house, fearing that the family members were victims of carbon monoxide poisoning. They found no one inside, but noticed 2 box fans blowing at a wet spot on the couch. Susan did not show up at her job on December 7th. A purse, wallet, and identification were all found in the house. Her cell phone was later found in the family's only vehicle, a Chrysler Town & Country minivan that Joshua had been using. Later that day at about 5 p.m., Joshua returned home with the 2 boys and was taken to the police station for questioning. He claimed he had left Susan sleeping at home shortly after midnight on December 7th and had taken the boys on a camping trip to Simpson Springs in western Utah. Police visited Simpson Springs on December 10th but found no evidence of the campsite that Joshua had described. They also found it suspicious that Joshua would take his young boys out camping in blizzard conditions after midnight when they were scheduled to go to daycare just hours later. Joshua had additionally not told his boss that he would be coming into work that day and explained to police it was because he had thought it was Sunday rather than Monday. Yikes. I wonder who did it. Susan Powell has been missing for 13 years, 10 months, and 17 days. Paul and Sarah Skiba and Lorenzo Chivers. Paul, his daughter Sarah, and Lorenzo, an employee of Skiba's moving business, disappeared under mysterious circumstances in Westminster, Colorado, on February 7, 1999. On the day that they went missing, Sarah accompanied her father Paul, who owned the Tough Movers Company in Westminster, on a job along with his employee Chivers. The 3 were last seen in Morrison that evening. Sarah was reported missing by her father after Paul failed to return home from her weekend visitation at this time. It was discovered that Paul and Chivers were also missing. A moving truck located at the Tough Movers was subsequently discovered with bullet holes in its side, blood evidence, as well as a portion of a human scalp near its windshield. A metal extension ramp for the truck was also missing from the lot. The disappearances of Skibas and Chivers received national attention and were profited on the Montel Williams show, America's Most Wanted, and by journalist Nancy Grace. In 2016, their names were included on the list of missing persons as part of a Colorado Senate bill petitioning for a statewide Missing Persons Day, which was signed into law on February 5th of that year. As of 2022, the whereabouts of Skibas and Chivers are still unknown, though law enforcement suspects foul play in their disappearances, and they are each presumed victims of homicide. Paul and Sarah Skiba and Lorenzo Chivers have been missing for 24 years, 8 months, and 7 days. Charles Rogers. Charles Rogers was an American pilot and murder suspect who disappeared in June 1965 after police discovered the dismembered bodies of his elderly parents in the refrigerator of the Houston home where all 3 of them shared, in what media later dubbed the Icebox Murders. Rogers has never been found and was declared dead in July 1975. He remains the only suspect in the murders, which is still considered unsolved. By 1965, Rogers was unemployed and living with his elderly parents, Fred Christopher and Edwina Ivor Rogers, in the Montrose neighborhood of Houston. Described as reclusive, Rogers was reported to have communicated with his parents by way of notes slipped under the door. Neighbors were unaware that Rogers lived with his parents, as he generally left the home before dawn and did not return until after dark. On June 23, 1965, 2 Houston police officers were dispatched to the Rogers home to conduct a welfare check after Edina's nephew Marvin reported that his phone calls to his aunts had gone unanswered for a few days. After receiving no answering after knocking, the officers forced their way into the Rogers home. Upon entering, the officers found nothing unusual but noticed food sitting on the dining room table. One officer opened the refrigerator and found what appeared to be numerous cuts of washed, unwrapped meat neatly stacked on the shelves. The officer later recalled that he thought the meat was that of a butchered hog. As the officer was closing the door, he noticed 2 human heads visible through the clear glass of the vegetable bin. The heads were those of Fred and Edwina Rogers. What the officer initially thought were unwrapped cuts of hog meat were actually the couple's dismembered limbs and torsos. Police later discovered the couple's organs in a nearby sewer. The organs have been removed, cut up, and flushed down the toilet, while other remains were never found. Police determined that Fred and Edwina Rogers had been killed on June 20th, Father's Day. An autopsy showed that Fred was bludgeoned to death with a claw hammer. His eyes had been gouged out and his genitalia was removed. Edwina had been beaten and shot, execution style, in the head. There was little blood in the house and it appeared that it had been thoroughly cleaned after the murders. What little blood was found was led to Charles' bedroom. There, police found a blood-stained keyhole saw, but no trace of Rogers himself. A search for Rogers was launched, and a warrant was issued for him as material witness to the crime, but he was never found. Jalik Rainwalker. Jalik Rainwalker, also known as Jay, was a boy who disappeared in 2007. He left a note suggesting that he left on his own accord, yet police now suspect foul play in his disappearance. His adopted parents had not been ruled out as a person of interest. Jalik was last seen at the home of his adopted paternal grandparents the night of November 1st, 2007. Him and his adoptive father, Stephen Carr, were the only people home. Jay was reported missing at 8:47 a.m. The next morning, he left behind a note saying, "Dear everybody, I'm sorry for everything. I won't be a bother anymore. Goodbye, Jalik." Because of this, it was initially believed he had run away. However, police soon announced that they believed he had met with foul play, although the possibility that he ran away or died by suicide could not be ruled out. Eileen and Tom Person had stated the note Jalik left was not a farewell message, but rather an apology note his father made him write for homework. Tom claims to have seen Jalik writing it. The Persons, along with several of Jalik's former foster parents and his adopted maternal grandparents, have created a website to publicize Jalik's disappearance. Eileen said that she believes Kerr was responsible. Wakana was an Indonesian minister and independence leader. He was one of the youths who forced Sukumu and Hatta to declare independence immediately after the surrender of the Japanese. He was the first Indonesian Minister of Youth and Sport, although in his era the office was called Minister of State for Youth Affairs. He was a member of the Indonesian Communist Party. Sometime after 1965 coup d'attempt. I don't know what that is. Sometime after the 1965 coup, he was arrested and went missing. It was supposed that he was one of the assassinated in the Indonesian mass killings of 1965 to 1966. Tanja Groen. Tanja Groen was a young woman who disappeared in the summer of 1993 near Maastricht, the Netherlands. She came from Scrogen and was just about to start studying health sciences at Maastricht University. Tanja was never found, nor was her bicycle, which disappeared with her. Tanja was the first-year student of health sciences at the university. She had lived on her own in Grootsveld since August 1st, 1993. Tanja last had phone contact with her mother on August 31st, 1993, around 7:30 or 7:50 p.m. Later that night, Tanja attended a party organized by the Students' Association Circumflex. The party took place in Suze of the student administration. Tanja left the party on her bicycle around midnight for her room in Gronsveld. However, she never arrived. On September 1st, 1993, her classes began, but also here she did not appear. She was no longer seen by classmates or fellow students. Patricia Spencer and Pamela Hobley. Patricia Spencer and Pamela Hobley were two American teenagers who went missing on Halloween, Friday, October 31st, 1969, in Michigan, after presumably committing truancy together, as they had both been seen walking in each other's company shortly before. The pair were aged 16 and 15, respectively, and were not considered friends at the time they disappeared. Their bodies were never recovered, yet it is believed that the authorities that both of their lives had ended with homicide. Hobley told her mother and three sisters that she planned to return home after attending her high school's homecoming football game and Halloween party. When she was absent after her family returned from trick-or-treating, her fiancé informed her mother that she had not arrived at the party. Hobley's mother then called other parents and learned that Spencer never arrived at the party either. Eventually, their absence became a missing person investigation, and police requested information from the community for assistance in discovering their whereabouts. For the first week of the investigation, it was speculated that they were runaways and on the intent to travel to Flint, Michigan. Hobley's sister, Mary, expressed her doubts that this was a case of such nature, citing the positive events that had taken place in the time before the girls went missing. Both girls were reportedly close to their families and did not bring their purses, identification, or extra clothing when they left. indicating that they did not disappear voluntarily. Pamela and Patricia have been missing for 53 years, 11 months, and 9 days. Matthew Baca. Guadalupe Mateo Baca Aragon, who went by Matthew, was a man from El Paso, Texas, who went missing from a bar in Ciudad Juarez after being abducted by police. Baca went missing along with 2 other men, Eddie Barragan and George Garibay. The 3 men were all from El Paso and are believed to have been involved in drug smuggling. They were possibly murdered by police assassins in Juarez. Several locations have been searched for their remains, and Barragan's remains missing. It is unknown whether or not Garibay's remains have been found. Cheryl Grimmer. Cheryl Grimmer was a 3-year-old toddler who was kidnapped in Fairy Meadow Beach in Wallalong, Illawarra, New South Wales, in January 1970. She had been in the shower block at the beach when witnesses claim a man took her and ran off. Cheryl's disappearance had been without explanation for over 45 years, until a suspect was arrested and charged in March 2017. The mentally unwell suspect, who had previously made a false confession about an unrelated murder, claimed that he, then 16 years old, had strangled Cheryl to death in a nearby suburb, about an hour after her abduction. At a court appearance, the man pleaded not guilty. His trial was expected to take place at the Supreme Court of New South Wales in May 2019, but a judge declared that a key piece of evidence was inadmissible, leading to the prosecution dropping the charges against the suspect in 2019. On the morning of January 12, 1970, the Grimmer family went to the beach at Fairy Meadow, and when the weather turned at 1:30 p.m., Carol decided that it was time to go home. The children all went to the shower block together while Carol was packing up her belongings. Ricky went back to Carol 10 minutes later, saying that Cheryl was refusing to come out of the shower block. She immediately followed Ricky back to the shower block to find that Cheryl had disappeared. There was no phone nearby, so Carol made her way to the house on the beach near Elliott's Road and asked the residents to call the police. At the time, witnesses claimed that a man was seen holding Cheryl up to drink water from a fountain and then ran off with her head wrapped in a towel. Those claims are now seen as unlikely. Cheryl's brother Ricky recalled picking up his sister so that she could drink from the fountain, and so it was believed that the witness had conflated in 2 occurrences. It was also claimed that Cheryl was spotted in a white car. Robin Graham. Robin Graham was a John Marston High School graduate and a Pierce College student. Disappeared from a Los Angeles freeway in the early hours of November 15, 1970. After her car had broken down. She had not been heard from since, nor are there any clues to her whereabouts or subsequent fate. Graham's case is often included in television programs focusing on missing persons. California Highway Patrol officers had noted Graham stranded beside her vehicle and had stopped several times and talked to her. They did not stop one final time when they observed her talking with a young man, now believed likely involved in her abduction. Their actions were consistent with existing policy. Based on Graham's disappearance, CHP policy was officially changed to ensure her safety of all stranded female motorists. At the time of her disappearance, Graham had long brown hair, brown eyes, fair skin, and was 5'6" in height. Graham was last seen in the California Highway Patrol officers at approximately 2 a.m. on November 15, 1970. Besides the vehicle, she had been driving on the shoulder of the southbound Hollywood Freeway near Santa Monica Boulevard and Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles, California. Thank you guys so much for watching this part 3 of the Missing Persons Iceberg Explained. I do apologize for last week for accidentally skipping section 4, but unfortunately I noticed it too late while I was editing and I didn't have time to record it to fix it properly. So I hope you guys can forgive me for that issue. That shouldn't happen anymore since because we are at the bottom now. So please stick around for next week's as we finally conclude the Missing Person Icebergs Explained series on Halloween, where we will be going to the very bottom depths of this iceberg list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.